It's Wednesday, June 19th, 2024. The time is 5:00 p.m. I call this special meeting of the Dillon Town Council to order. Roll call.
Here. Here.
Here.
Hendrick,
Here.
Christensen,
Here.
and Slavera.
Here. Next item is approval of the agenda. The agenda is not changing from how it was published, 6 items. So we'll read it as written. The next item is citizen comments. Citizens are asked to limit their comments to 5 minutes. Council will take comments into consideration. Thank you. But will not make decisions at this time. Council will not engage in back and forth dialogue, but may respond to a speaker with brief factual information or refer the speaker to the town manager to arrange a meeting with an appropriate staff member for discussion of the speaker's topic at an appropriate time. However, the council has no obligation to engage with the speaker by either of the foregoing methods or at all. So I'll start with our sign-in sheet and then we'll do hands from there. So first we have Mike Smith. If you would go up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and then we'll take your comment. Yes.
Excuse me for wearing these sunglasses. I just had some stuff done on my eye today, and I'm not trying to be cool because those of you know me know I'm not. Okay. But I want to address the town board. I'm, as a citizen of the county for 53 years, a resident of the town of Dillon for over 30 years, and a 3-time council member, I'm highly concerned with what's going on right now. Very concerned. Very upset. Okay, first of all, let me cover something that upset me when I read it in the newspaper. And I got to congratulate, I'm always very adamant against the Summit Daily News for some of the articles they write, because I don't think they're always accurate. I think I'm wrong. I think this time they wrote some good articles and I want to congratulate him. He's not here, but I want to thank him. Oh, okay. But the thing of it is, what I'm concerned about some comments have been made by some of the town board members here, specifically in dealing with workforce housing. Some of the town members were quoted as saying that possibly the workforce housing should be in Kremling or Fairplay or Leadville for the quote unquote poor people. I would like to ask you council members who made that, the two of you that made that, if you'd publicly disclose what your definition of a poor person is. Because I think 53 years ago, I was a poor person when I came to this county because my wife and I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. And quite frankly, I think you owe my employees from outside the county who work for me, and they're the backbone along with everyone else in this community to make this community what it is. They are the backbone. You also have town employees that live outside the town that are quote unquote poor people by your definition. I think you owe them a public apology, and I think you owe them a personal apology. And I'm asking for an apology for my employees and for those employees in the town that are also poor people. Okay, this town was made, this community was made 50 years ago by poor people who lived in the trailers in Silverthorne and lived throughout. They're the people that made this county and what this town is today. And you owe them all an apology. I'm not sure if you think you're an elitist or not, but you're not. The elitists are in Vail and Aspen. With that, I also ask you your concern of the decision you made with regards to the church. As you know, I sat on the council for 3 different terms. Each year at the beginning of our terms, the town attorney sat down and gave us a background of what we were covered for, what we should do, what we shouldn't do. One of those things is you should not violate the Constitution of the United States or the Constitution of the state of Colorado. If you did, and you knowingly violated that, and admittedly that you knowingly violated that, then you lose your coverage through your insurance, which each of you are covered as council members through the blanket policy through the state and the city. And if you lose that, I think you all know you're sacrificing your personal lives and your personal ability. So I think at this point in time, I think you need to sit down, consider what you can do to dig yourself out of the hole you've put yourself in. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, I have Nita Lisa Jorgensen. Just a sign in, okay. David Everly. If you would come on up to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and then I'll start your 5-minute timer.
I'm David Everly. I live full-time. I vote at 205 East Levante Street, the sale lofts. And I'm going to read my comments because I'm not good at extemporaneously speaking. Okay, here goes. What does the separation of church and state mean? Oh, maybe it should be higher.
Yeah, you could take it off and hold it if you want.
Okay. Thank you.
And just so everyone knows, I don't think the microphones actually project into the room. It's just for the recording.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why they're not working. Okay, go ahead, sorry.
So what does the separation of church and state mean? The earliest mention of it comes from Roger Williams, a Puritan minister who found a new form of government based on this idea. Williams referenced a high wall between church and state to keep the wilderness of governments out of the affairs of religion. Essentially, he wanted to stop the chaos and immorality of government from invading the purity of a person's conscience and their freedom to find their own truth and salvation. Today, we view the US Constitution's First Amendment as preserving our religious liberty by preventing the government from establishing religion or not preventing the free exercise thereof. But even more profoundly, the form of government that the Constitution creates was designed to limit the authority of the government to civil issues only. It does this by making the people the sole authority of government. As a result, it protects everyone's individual liberty to worship or not, however they choose, without the government being allowed to intervene. I urge you, the town council, to follow previous legal advice and avoid endorsement or preference to any particular church or religion. Thank you.
Thanks for your comment. Wendy Myers. If you would come on up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and then I'll start your 5-minute timer. Feel free to hold the microphone if you want, or stand wherever you're comfortable. Just project into the microphone, please.
That's who I am. I'm Wendy Myers. It's Myers. I live at 028 Tallyho Court. Address is Dillon, but it's actually unincorporated Dillon. I am here to speak for the Dillon Community Church. I have been a member of that church for quite a while, and I've been going to it for probably about 20 years now. I was also on the Snake River Planning Commission for 12 years before I was term limited. So I'm pretty well aware of some of the constrictions that you guys might be under. At the very least, I believe that Dillon Community Church should be grandfathered into whatever contract you guys decide to do with the town. They've been there for over 40 years. And it attracts an incredible number of our visitors that come to this county every single summer and love coming to the church. There's nothing wrong with going to church, in my opinion. So that's all I have to say is I think you all ought to take into consideration what is right and what is not right. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy. Something with a G. Okay, sounds good. Sean Budson. If you would state your name and address for the record, and then I'll start your 5-minute timer.
My name is Sean Butson. I live at 101 Gold Run Circle in Dillon. I'm going to speak very quickly because I only get 5 minutes. So my apologies. I'm speaking tonight to urge you not to reconsider your vote from last week that denied resolution number 30-24. Following are a few key points to consider in your deliberations. Dillon Community Church has never asked for exclusivity or preferential treatment regarding the use of the amphitheater, and its services are always open to anyone that wants to attend. This is a very important legal determination. The Freedom from Religion Foundation is trying to intimidate the town into preventing the church from using the amphitheater. But according to the First Liberty Institute, which has won 4 major religious liberty cases in front of the Supreme Court over the last 5 years, the foundation's analysis omitted several important legal precedents related to governments making their facilities available for private use, including to schools, the senior center, libraries, and even the Breckenridge Riverwalk. And the law is crystal clear that governments cannot discriminate against churches regarding use of their facilities. But don't take my word for it. The Freedom from Religion Foundation's website even discloses this, saying, quote, 2 decisions by the U.S. Supreme Court provide for the use of public school buildings by churches, religious and political groups on a viewpoint neutral basis, if the public school districts are already renting their facilities after hours to other community groups. I understand that there's concern associated with allowing the church to continue to use the amphitheater until a new policy is approved. This is a non-issue because a new policy has already been written by Councilmember John Woods, which simply needs to be reviewed and voted on. There's also concern about how much to charge private parties for the amphitheater. Again, this is a non-issue as there are many precedents for charging not-for-profits a discounted rate or even nothing at all, like what Summit County libraries do for churches and other not-for-profits. Unfortunately, some people have erroneously suggested that the church and other organizations should pay rent of $12,500, which equates to an arbitrary 50% discount from $25,000. And that supposedly is the amount the town could make on a concert on a weekend night. This nonsensical calculation assumes that the economic value of the amphitheater is the same on a Sunday morning as it is on a weekend night, despite the fact that the demand is dramatically lower. Have you ever been to a popular concert on a Sunday morning and bought an expensive ticket for it? No, me neither. If the town council overturns its previous vote and therefore only allows town-sponsored events at the amphitheater, I believe there will be dramatically increased scrutiny about how the town determines which events to sponsor and possibly even a lawsuit. For example, should the town stop sponsoring Summit Soul Yoga because its website mentions soul and spirit? No, of course not. But some fanatical anti-religious group like the foundation could try to make that argument. And since we're talking about town-sponsored events, I must confess that I won't even take my children to some of the concerts due to the profane and drug-encouraging lyrics, not to mention the overwhelming secondhand smoke, which according to the CDC and the American Lung Association can cause blocked arteries, stroke, heart disease, lung cancer, low birth weight, and even death among children. Why is the no smoking ordinance never enforced? And why on earth are these concerts promoted on the town website as being appropriate for all ages? Am I supposed to take my 11-year-old to these concerts? I won't do it. And for those of you that have told me that alcohol and smoking are the same thing, I remind them that there's no such thing as secondhand drinking. When I have a beer, it doesn't damage your organs. The smoking is so bad, in fact, that some of my friends can't even attend due to asthma and migraines that are exacerbated by the clouds of smoke. And regarding the language of some of the bands that I won't include here due to its extremely vulgar nature, there was someone recently quoted in the Summit Daily saying that if the town opens up the amphitheater to outside groups, quote, we're going to likely end up with things we don't want to hear, things that our citizens or our public wandering by doesn't want to hear, end quote. Unfortunately, that's already happened with some bands. And to be clear, I'm not asking the town to prevent certain bands from playing, but I am asking it to enforce the no smoking ordinance and to promote bands only to certain age groups if necessary. It'd also be nice if the town would bring in some acts that broadly appeal to town residents over 50, which is a group I am a part of now. Finally, the town staff justified its anti-private use resolution by saying that it supported the town goal of, quote, promoting a positive sense of community. I would argue that kicking out one of the largest community supporters while promoting profane, drug-encouraging bands achieves the opposite. This is why it's so important for this council to pass a resolution welcoming outside organizations as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Finally, I invite all of you to join us Sunday, hopefully at the amphitheater. Thank you for your time.
Up next, we have Jen Barchers. If you would state your name and address for the record, and then I'll start your 5-minute timer.
Jen Barchers, 135 Main Street, Dillon. All right, Council, thank you for your service and for taking the time to listen to the citizens on this matter. As a previous town council member, I'm familiar with the challenges and issues you face and the public and private feedback that follows. Since I left council, I have intentionally stayed out of council business like the current development issues because I know how difficult it is to match the needs of the town with the desires of the citizens. However, after hearing the great amount of feedback from citizens about the development, including a petition to override a council vote, the council, minus the mayor and council member Hendricks, continues to show a pattern of disrespect to citizens, town staff, and now the town attorney. Questionable comments made by council at this most recent meeting show blatant disregard to legal advice and staff recommendations is worrisome. Sorry, the questionable comments are worrisome, unprofessional, and disappointing. The highly and discriminatory and offensive language from Councilmember Woods regarding our workforce and workforce housing is a subject for another day, but no doubt adds to the questionable ethics and decision-making from some members of this council. I previously served on Dillon Town Council, the Summit Fire Board, and as vice president and as faculty senate president at CMC, where I'm quite familiar with board proceedings and the role of legal counsel on boards. Well, I think everyone understands that boards can go against the advice of the attorney. I don't believe I've ever seen anyone on any of the boards I've been involved with actually do that. Every effort is made by the board to come up with a solution that falls within legal parameters as advised by the attorney of the board. The fact that this council, again, minus the mayor and council member Hendricks, voted to totally disregard the attorney's legal advice, and had members that did not recuse themselves, even though it is likely they had a conflict of interest by being members of the Dillon Community Church, that this was a major problem in my eyes. If a potential solution has been reached in the interim between the last meeting and now, I am still concerned about how all of this was handled. I'm concerned about the disrespect shown to the Dillon staff and the citizens of Dillon by putting a town in a vulnerable position of losing legal counsel. The resulting loss of the legal team, the potential challenges to get another legal team, knowing that this council goes against the advice of its lawyers, and the fact that the town is currently vulnerable to lawsuits from this decision is very unfortunate and was unnecessary. And I wouldn't doubt that Dillon might get even more messages like the message from the Freedom from Religious Foundation or other groups. I disagree with a council member's statement that the lawyer's job is to solve the problems or to be a fixer when the councils don't get their way. It's a council or a board's job to think of compromises and solutions with your fellow council members and citizens and use legal staff to confirm that your decisions are legally sound. It is the council that failed in this instance, not the legal team. And now Dillon may struggle to avoid lawsuits, secure a new legal team, and potentially have to stop meeting because of your negligence. It is sad and embarrassing to hear the moans and groans and phrases like Dillon is a mess or what is wrong with Dillon Town Council after serving on this council for many years. I hope the council works on being more representative of all Dillon residents and guests, not just those belonging to a church or who share the same belief systems. And I hope this council begins to publicly show more respect to the public, town staff, and the town legal team in the future. Thanks.
Thanks for your comment. Up next, I have Kevin McDonald. If you would state your name and address for the record, and then I'll start your 5-minute timer.
Thanks. Kevin McDonald, 1282 Bald Eagle Road, Silverthorne. Lived in the community in Silverthorne for 31 years, and I'm a member of Dillon Community Church for about 30. Took us a few months to shop around, I guess. I've met a couple of you guys. I used to be on town council in Silverthorne for 9 years. Probably met you at Mayors and Managers and other things. So I know what it's like to sit in your chair. You know, probably 3-6 months ago, you guys were not even thinking about this issue being a special meeting or anything like that. But it's kind of funny how the ball kind of starts rolling away from you on things like this. When I was on town council, probably like you guys do, every year we would take a look at the nonprofits that wanted us to contribute money or use of facilities or both. And every year we did grant nonprofits either free or very reduced, usually free, but sometimes reduced, use of our pavilion or like the baseball field at Trent Park. That's what the baseball team would use all the time, or the new park out at the North Summit Sky Ranch. But pavilion was, you know, pretty much the big one that they wanted to have use so they could have a fundraiser. So we were pretty commonly granted that. Like I said, it's not because we were endorsing them or preferring them over another nonprofit. It's just because they asked and we thought, yeah, the time's available. We'd work with them to schedule things like that. We thought that's just being part of a community. And so I think that's all we're asking here. We are, you know, this issue from where you guys sit, I mean, to me, there's a couple of wings. On one side, there's, you know, kind of the old Puritan, hey, the government has to support a certain religion. That's why the Pilgrims probably came across the ocean from England. Present day Iran is, if you're not in a certain religion, it's going to be a tough day for you in Iran. That's the very, very, very edge of one side. On the other side, it's no religious community can be even accommodated in this day and age. And we're not asking for either of those. We're not asking for any endorsement or preference. We're just asking you to really serve the community the way we've done the last 40 some years. The way we've done for 100 years is Dillon Community Church. And I know when you're sitting in your seats, it might feel like you're trying to thread the needle between one extreme and the other, that you have like this much space to really get it right. And I would contend that the middle is a lot broader than you think it is. I think there's a lot of room for accommodation in your policies. I'm not a constitutional attorney, but I think the Constitution allows quite a bit of leeway for you guys to determine what you want to do without bumping into the left or bumping into the right, whatever that means. So I appreciate your service. I know people always say, I'd like to get this person or that person on town council, but I know that it's a tough job. It's done by people that actually show up and run. So thanks. I know it's especially tough on a summer's night when you look at the mountains and you'd rather be somewhere else, but that's the job, I guess. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Up next, I have Nancy Campbell. Is that okay?
Someone else can read it.
Is that how
read letters? I brought one, so I said. If you don't want to instruct precedence, that's fine.
Well, since with other letters we received by email, we're not going to read into the public record, but we can include it in the public record if you give a copy to Adrian and then she can include it. Julie and Paul. Just to sign in. Okay. Steve Hill, if you would state your name and address for the record, and then I'll start your 5-minute timer.
Okay, good evening. My name is Stephen Hill. I'm a resident of Silverthorne, 1683 Falcon Circle. I've been there for or in the county for about 30 years and attending Dillon Community Church for 30 years. I'm not going to get close to my 5 minutes because I think most people have touched on most of the points that I want to make. I would like to follow up on Kevin's comment about threading the needle. I have many decades of experience in a county government, in planning particular, and it is always threading the needle. And clearly, the council's advice that you had as far as not just allowing any buddy except for town sponsored events is clearly the most easy and legally defensible position as to how to address this. But it doesn't meet the needs of broad spectrum of the community. Clearly doesn't meet the needs of Dillon Community Church. And I think that there's many others that it also isn't going to be able to accommodate. It was mentioned yoga. If I was a little more flexible, I'd come for that, but that would be a sad sight. I'm sorry. So I would suggest that the town really work hard to try and accommodate a broader use of the amphitheater and accommodate those people that can really enjoy it and appreciate it. I'm sure that there's lots of ways to do it, but if you decide to have some sort of working group to consider the various options, I'd personally be willing to work with you on that. I addressed Nathan last week on that. So I just thank you again for your service on this, and hope you find a great resolution to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim Westerberg, if you would state your name and address for the record, and then I'll start your 5-minute timer.
Okay. Tim Westerberg, 225 Tenderfoot Street, Dillon. I've been in the town of Dillon as a full-time resident for 20 years, although I know compared to some people, that still makes me kind of a rookie. And also served on the Dillon Town Council for 8 years. I'd like to speak in a general sense to reaffirm what I know this council already knows, but I think is worth repeating at this point, and that is the importance of maintaining public trust. Our system of democracy, or systems of democracy that we have in this country, rely to a large extent on maintaining public trust in our public institutions and the elected officials or appointed officials who administer those systems. We presently have in this country, and it's not unique, it's happened before, but we presently have an erosion of public trust in some of our public institutions, particularly at the federal level. You're all aware that recent polls indicate that the public trust is eroding a bit in the Supreme Court of the United States, the Congress, the presidency. People feel more comfortable with governments close to home. And that's why it's particularly important for town councils in this case to be reminded, or to keep in mind, I know you know this, but to keep in mind the importance of maintaining public trust. The reason I bring that up tonight is that to some extent over the last couple of years, but over the last few months in particular, I have heard more people questioning what is our town council up to than I recall hearing in my previous 20 years here in Dillon. And of course, they're referring to the town council in general, or in some cases, as has been mentioned before, to me, offensive comments that have been made by individuals. The general gist of what I'm hearing, for what it's worth, and it may be not worth anything, but the general gist of what I'm hearing is they don't seem to care. They don't seem to care about what the community thinks. Don't seem to care, most recently, about what their attorney says. Don't seem to care about what the Constitution says. Don't seem to care. It's just, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead, bulldoze our way towards our agenda, whatever that agenda might be. So I remind you, and again, it's not that you're not aware of this, but I remind you of the importance in public service of maintaining the public trust. Do not let that slip away. Thank you.
Thank you. And now the fun part, that was everyone who signed up. So is anyone else here today to make a public comment? You can indicate that by raising your hand. If you would, head up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and then I'll start your 5-minute timer.
You are pretty cool, Mike, in those shades, whether you wear them. Hi, my name is Roman Moore. I live at 105 Straight Creek Drive in Dillon Valley in unincorporated Summit County. I've lived up here for over 17 and a half years, coming up here from Denver for a little better life, as I think a lot of people have. Like to mention a few things some words: love, hope, compassion, forgiveness. These are words that sometimes people don't like. Even if they're hearing them, they don't want to hear them, but you don't have to listen to them. But this is, I think, what has been spoken over and over consistently by Dillon Community Church members and the way they run their church. I think that's a good thing. I mean, I understand when certain members of the town council are concerned about what is being said, but that doesn't mean you have to stand there and listen to it if you don't like it. Just like if somebody is, a musical act or somebody's doing hate speech at the amphitheater, don't have to stand there and listen to it. That's part of the freedom to move on. And it's also part of freedom of speech, whether you agree with something or not. And freedom of speech is, I think, part of this. Nobody's forcing anybody to do anything. Nobody's forcing anybody to listen to hate speech. Nobody's forcing anybody to listen to speech that is positively oriented. And I'm going to mention something that I don't know if anybody on the town council has noticed. The Freedom from Religion Foundation, if you looked at their website, and you can pull it up anytime, they talk about this town council, this town. They got it wrong. I mean, I was here last week, and I'm kind of an old guy these days, so maybe my memory's failing, but didn't the town council kind of end up last week talking about reversing or canceling the resolution and waiting until they reworded it to where they would be more inclusive of other groups, other churches, other nonprofits? And yet on the website of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, they seem to have a whole different story. They said that the town council went back to giving exclusive rights to Dillon Community Church. That's wrong. As a former journalist, news director for 8.5 years up here, I prided myself on truth. And not that I was ever perfect, I'm not perfect now, but I guarantee you that when I make a mistake, I'll admit to it. I own up to it. But when people like the Freedom from Religion Foundation make a statement like that, how many people are really going to know they're not telling the truth? And that's a problem. Also, as a Vietnam veteran, a combat veteran, I fought for freedom for everybody, whether I like them or not, whether I agree with them or not. So that means no matter who you are, no matter what your beliefs or non-beliefs are, I put my life on the line for everyone, because this is what this country is supposed to be about. And I just wanted you to know that the people that wrote you the letter were being disingenuous and basically dishonest on their own website. And I would like to see what happened at the end of the meeting last week, that all groups are considered to go into the amphitheater. All churches, all nonprofits, all of that. Because that's what we're all about here, isn't it? Is including everyone, whether we like them or agree with them or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here from the public to make a comment tonight in the back? If you would, come on up to the podium. We make way. Thank you. State your name and address for the record, and then I'll start your 5-minute timer.
It's Patty Burnett, and been here for 44 years. Yeah, we live in Dillon.
Your address, please.
47 Legend Circle. And, you know, for years we did, well, my husband still does, but we did search and rescue, ski patrol, critical incident stress debrief. That stuff is great, but really the community that we have in Dillon Community Church far surpasses all that stuff as far as the support that we give to each other. I spent a little time this morning just reading about separation of church and state, and I think that Jefferson would probably roll in his grave, but I know that there's one thing that he would think is okay, and it's that I pray for you guys because you're important to us. And that's what our faith tells us we need to do, is pray for you guys. So be assured of that.
Thank you. Anybody else here from the public to make a comment tonight? We'll get to you next, up here first, and then we'll go to the back. If you would state your name and address for the record, and then I'll start your.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Tiller. I live at 605 Oral Grand Street. And what I wanted to say is just basically, there's nothing against the local church or the beliefs or praying for people. I think the issue is just keep it out of government and things that are owned by the town, owned by the government, and just try to have a respect for the rules that should apply to everyone. And that's the one thing that, I mean, I'm a recovering Catholic, grade school, high school, 12 years. So, I mean, it's not like I don't have a background in some religion. I have a lot of Islam friends, Muslim friends, Hindu friends. And I just think if there's a rule that's been made, if it's our constitutional First Amendment, it should apply to every situation regarding government and town, and just keep it separate. And that's just my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you. And then in the back, come on up to the podium, and then if you would state your name and address for the record, and then I'll start your 5-minute timer.
My name is Norm Shaw. I live at 220 East Levante Street. And I'm really concerned just about the way things get skewed. I was here in the meeting last week, and to say that there was disrespect to the attorney, I'm not sure that's appropriate. The attorney presented one option, and a good consultant will provide many options. The attorney completely neglected to point out that there were policies in other places around here, like Breckenridge, that allow for the use of nonprofits and religious organizations to use their facilities. And the fact that that was completely just ignored tells me that that's not the best counsel. So if that's disrespectful, I'm sorry, but we need to consider all the options. And the Constitution does not restrict government from allowing religious organizations to use their properties. It just says that it can't be entwined or, be enforcing it. And the big issue is, if you look at church history, was that governments ran the churches and everything was horribly corrupt, leading even to murder. And the reason that our Constitution was established was to separate that, not to kill religion, but to allow for freedom of religion. That's all I have to say.
Anyone else? Going once. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Up next, I move to go into executive session pursuant to sections 343 of the Dillon Home Rule Charter and CRS 24640224B for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions concerning use of the Dillon Amphitheater. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So thanks for being here, everyone. We're not going to make any decisions in executive session, but we'll